Well, friends, I am so excited because this is a friend that we've met in person very briefly, and I'm excited that I get to have a longer conversation to talk about her new book. So, my guest today is Amber O'Neill Johnston. Welcome, Amber. Why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. I am a homeschooling mom and wife to Scott. We live outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I am originally from Illinois, and Scott's from Ohio. So we're Midwesterners at heart, but we met at the Art Museum in Atlanta, the High Museum of Art. I know. So
Really?
yeah, it was great. I love that that's our story. So we met there, and we have four children. Nina and Sasha will be 16 and 14 soon, and my boys Beckett and Brooks will be Beckett just turned 12 and Brooks will be 10 soon. So 16, 14, 12, and 10 once we make it through birthday season. And they've all been homeschooled from the beginning. I also run a nonprofit homeschool support group. We're entering our 10th year here locally, so we're really entrenched in local community. I write books and speak at conferences and other places at schools and around the nation. And when I'm lucky, occasionally in another country. And I blog still because I'm old and I'm never going to
I do
stop.
too. Yes. I have so many thoughts I need to get out there. Yeah.
I mean, also, I'm just like, hey, my search functionality on my website is really powerful. Like, there are years worth of like good information. And anyway, I'm like, I'm sorry, guys, I can't catch up. But I do play on social media too. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm in the midst of homeschooling. And, again, I still have this almost 10-year-old, but then I have one, a junior in high school, and so I'm also a guidance counselor now, and I'm learning the ropes for helping her to reach her goals. So it's a busy time.
It really is, like, we're getting an education as we homeschool. You talk about I still have younger ones, but then you as your kids get older, you move into completely new seasons where you have to learn so many things. My oldest is 36, my youngest is 14, and I've homeschooled all the way through, except, when we did foster care for a while, for, like, 6 months, those kids, they had to be in public school, and as soon as I had the chance, I went in because it was a lot. It was hard. I'm like, "It's so much easier to homeschool." It is so much easier to pick the homeschool curriculum and what we wanna do than trying to keep up with all those teachers for 4 kids. It was a lot. So, I would just love like, I know right now you are such a powerful voice in the homeschool community. I see you at conferences and just I've tried to go talk to you at your booth, but there's so many people that are trying to talk to you. I'm like, "I will catch her later." So people really value what you have to say, at conferences and, through your books and the community. But I would just love to go back a little bit. And why did you decide to homeschool? What inspired you to homeschool your own kids?
Well, that's a great question because both of my parents were public school principals. So I think
Ooh.
I know I am not a likely candidate here. My grandfather and my sister were both elected public school board members. So my family is deeply entrenched in public education, and it probably leads to some of my support of teachers in those areas even now. But
Mhm.
Scott, my husband, was convinced that homeschooling was the right thing for our oldest daughter. And I disagreed vehemently. I thought it was ridiculous. It was a silly idea. It was not something I was interested in on multiple levels. Like there was just nothing about it that interested me. I was a stay at home mom. So he was thinking, like, oh, it's not that big of a shift. And I'm like, no, no, that's a huge shift. Um, and so, in his wisdom, he suggested that I try it just for 1 year. Um, and we had already paid that year's like deposit for our daughter to be in a local Christian preschool. This was K4, by the way, all of this drama. Um, and, and he was like, just try it for 1 year. And if you don't like it, we can just put her in school and it'll be fine. I was like, sure, 1 year to get him off my back. And then I spent that year falling in love with homeschooling. So that's kind of
Mm.
how we arrived here.
I love that, and it's so interesting because I never thought I would homeschool either, but I saw and this was I started homeschooling in '92. like 92, 93. Like this is back in the dark ages of homeschooling,
Yeah.
but I saw other parents who were really the pioneers and I'm like, I want teenagers like that. And that's like it's interesting what gets our interest. And for you, obviously your husband saw things that he's like, ooh, this will benefit our family. And
Yeah.
I know that your approach to homeschooling, you call it as life-giving and culturally rich. How did that philosophy develop for you from going to no, I do not want to do this. We'll try it out. I'm just going to get my husband on my back to it's a life-giving, it's culturally rich. You have this
Mhm.
community that you are surrounded with. So how did that transition happen?
Wow. Okay. So there were two things. One, Judy, the lady at the park, we call her. My husband would take our kids to this park almost every day because we had a crappy backyard at the time. And he would come home and tell me what this lady Judy at the park said. Today, Judy said this about homeschooling. Today, Judy said that about homeschooling. And I'm like, listen, if you tell me one more story about this lady Judy, we're going to have a problem. Okay. So one day I went to the park with the kids and he wasn't there. And this woman came up to me and she's like, "Oh, I recognize your kids. You're Scott's wife. I'm Judy." So I was thinking like I could hit her right now and run, but
Darts were going at Judy. Like,
exactly. I was like, "Oh, Judy." But, I didn't wanna be super rude, so I just let her talk to me, and wow, I came under her trance, and I understood, and she invited me
mm,
to her home, and I walk in and I say the whole thing. I mean, we're still friends today, but I say it was all a plot because when I walked in, there was the smell of fresh baked cookies in the air, and she doesn't even bake, so I'm like, "That was such a plan, a plot," you know? "When have you baked for me since then?" But
yeah.
she had a pot of tea steeping, and she sat down and we talked, and she showed me, like, the areas that she uses in her home and what her kids were working on, and they're both a year ahead of my two oldest. And so, at the end of the morning that I spent with her, she asked me this question. She said, um, if is there anyone better suited to teach your children than you? And if so, why? And it was out of that discussion, she wasn't like pressuring. I was fumbling. I was trying to come up, oh, a teaching degree or, or whatever. And she was like, does anyone know your children the way you do? And I was just
Mm,
like so kind of stumped by this. So that was the entry point for me to feel confident. Like she built up my confidence. That's the gift that she gave. And it's part of why I started my group because I've been wanting to do that for other moms since then. The part about that's the life-giving part. She gave me a vision of a life-giving home. The culturally rich part came from, I thought this is going to be so beautiful and all that. But I ran smack dab into this wall in that our homeschooling community at that time that I knew about in our area was overwhelmingly starkly white, and my
mhm.
family is overwhelmingly starkly not. And it was hard. I was like, "What is going on?" And I would tell my husband, "See, this is what I'm talking about. We aren't even supposed to be doing this. This is crazy." And it was just difficult. Like there were cultural things, there were questions my kids had about why everybody looks different or why they look different, and all of the things that we hadn't really had to address when they were just more collectively growing in our own home. Um, and out of that, I decided to bring in a lot of aspects of our culture into our homeschool through books and poetry and music and art. And it became very culturally rich with a double meaning culture, and then as in our African American culture, but also we were becoming cultured and I was learning
Mhm.
alongside them. And it was so deeply impactful that that's what I chose to start talking about publicly.
Yeah, so good. I love that. And so, yeah, I grew up in California, which is very culturally diverse. Then we moved to Montana for 15 years, which was not culturally diverse at all. And so when we moved to Little Rock, I'm like, I'm so excited. Like we're being around culturally diverse people again.
Yeah.
And go to church, go to homeschool group. I'm like, what? Why is everyone around me white? And we went to a multi ethnic church for many, many years until we moved to a different town. But our friendships grew out of that, and I wanted my kids to have that, and I love that you're talking about this. I think it is so important, but you kinda have to seek it out. You have to make an effort. Otherwise, you're just gonna kind of float and realize, like, everyone looks like me, everyone has the same opinions of me, and I don't think that is important. I have 3 kids living overseas. 2 are in Poland, one's in the Czech Republic. They're all missionaries, and I want our children to understand the world, to get out into the world, and it takes a little effort, and I love so much that you were a voice, whether, even if people don't look like you maybe in your immediate area. Let's read poetry. Let's listen to music. Let's understand the world. It is so important for kids because I think we get narrow minded when we're just around the people that are just like us all the time.
Sure. And I think that, we start with the idea of what are we going to intentionally study in our homeschool, but that overflows in other areas. And I
Hmm.
think it's funny that we're having this conversation. I don't even know if you're aware of this, but one time we were both at a conference, presenting at a conference, and our boys spent time together in the expo, your son and my son. And I was watching them. I actually was really annoyed with my son because I wanted him to stay put, and he just kept darting off, but they were having so much fun. I was just like, they were probably having too much fun because I was like, what exactly are you
Oh.
guys doing?
They're
But
probably climbing up stuff.
yes,
Like, people walk up to me because I know my kids, or they know Casey's my son, and they're like,
yeah.
"Casey's going up the down escalator." I'm like, "Oh my." Yeah.
They're like, no shocker here. So those two just took off. I don't know if his name is Casey, my son's name is Beckett, and they were fast
Yeah.
friends. And I think that's the point of what we're talking about. So here they
Mhm.
walked into an environment, they saw each other, they felt connected. Like, let's go, get into some adventures or mischief. And I feel like here we are separately in our own homes doing our own thing, but instilling those values where our children can see each other looking different from each other,
Mhm.
not knowing one another, and immediately feel like this is somebody I could be friends with. And to me, that's the heart of
Mhm.
all of it.
I love that. So I did not know that story, but
Yeah,
that
you were
is
you were busy.
that
Your booth was packed.
I know. And it is like it's like you kinda see your kids playing and they'll go, "Who are you with?" I'm sure he said, "I was hanging out with Beckett." I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah,
this." I mean, you're at a homeschool conference, like,
yeah,
pretty much it's gonna
we're just
be
out
kinda
there.
safe
Yeah,
safe people, and sometimes they'll say, "It's another his mom speaks too," and I'm like, then I know we're extra cool, like,
yeah,
"Okay, yeah, totally." But, yeah, I'm, like, always like, "Can someone go see where this child is
yeah,
somewhere in this expo?"
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, good. So next time we're together, they can hang out again. I love
yeah.
that. Oh, so good. Okay. I know what I loved too. Now you have a new book,
Yes.
Homegrown, and it's a collaboration, which is exactly what we're talking about of homeschool parents. And I kind of know the answer, but I want you to say it. Like, what was your vision behind bringing these voices together from different backgrounds and like things that they focus on in their homeschooling?
Mhm. So it was two things. One, it was the power of that conversation with Judy, right? I had read books, I was looking at blog posts, I was doing all this stuff, and I was not convinced that homeschooling was for me. It took a conversation one on one in someone's home with them pouring into me their ideas. Like, it's not have to be the same thing I do, but knowing and hearing from this one specific person helped and made all the difference for me. And I feel like we're so sometimes inundated right now, and especially at any stage of homeschooling, because we're always growing and needing information and input and encouragement. And I'm like, what if you can't have coffee with Sally Clarkson, or if you can't sit down with a homeschooling dad and find out what it is he loves about this life, or what about the moms who are living overseas that you don't have ready access to sit in person face to face. And instead I brought those voices together. So there are 30 essays from 30 different homeschoolers. The other thing is I wanted the book to reflect what I hope the homeschooling world becomes, and that's men and women who love their children and are intentionally leading their homes, but are from different denominations and different parts of the city and out in homesteading, and older women who are grandparents, and moms with brand new babies, and conservative and liberal, and all the things, to say, like, on this one thing we stand together united. And also it's ethnically diverse, the book is, but there's so much other diversity. That's just one area, but you're hearing from white voices and black voices and Latino voices and Asian voices, and they're all coming in and bringing their piece of the pie to really create something beautiful. And it's basically, it's just what I wanted to read that I
Yeah,
couldn't
I
find
love it.
myself. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna make it so that I can grow and learn in that way too.
I think it's so important. So back in the 90s, I keep aging myself, but there was a book that was kind of similar, but it was like different people, and it wasn't this like it wasn't essays. It was more like this is this family. They live here. Their top priorities are three things. I like it was like this. I don't know. Someone probably self-published it and put it at a homeschool conference. It was so good because this person has one child. They live in an apartment, and this person has 13 kids, and they live on a farm. Like it was just so good for me, and again, it didn't have the depth of which I just am falling in love with your book too.
Yeah.
But didn't have that depth, but just it helped me so much as a homeschool mom just getting started. Had been a teen mom, so I had 3 kids by the time I was 22. And then
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm gonna homeschool. And I'm sure everyone just thought it was like crazy. And I was just like listening to these older people, and I'm so glad you had Judy. I had Sandy and different other people that spoke into my life that was like, you can do it. And then I was just realizing recently, one of my daughter is a university professor. She's 33. I had to think about it for a minute. She's 33. She lives in Europe. She's getting her master's degree, and she had to take a test in a foreign language because she had to take it in Czech, part of it in Czech, to apply for her master's program. And I'm like, you know what? For that 22-year-old little girl who didn't really know what she was doing, that just trusted that reading aloud to her kids and going to homeschool co-op once in a while and just doing those things, reading the Bible, like it would work, and I'm like, "Okay, it kinda worked," and I'm so glad that those people like that little tiny booklet and that my friend Sandy, whose kids were running around the house, and she's like, "Oh, I have my friend helps me with reading because I don't like teaching my kids to read." Like, it's okay to do things differently, and it's okay just to spend time with your kids, and now looking back, I just that little bit of hope, the kids will learn and grow and discover things on their own. We just have to kind of be there to guide them and connect with them and spend time with them and help them to do that. And I love that you have all these voices that of people who love their kids from completely different backgrounds. And with every essay, the ones I've already started reading, I'm like, oh, that's a good point. Oh, I like that. And it's just as already. I've been homeschooling for all those years. I still have 3 at home. I'm getting so much out of it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. That's music to my ears.
Yeah. So, for those who want to know about Homegrown, like, what would you say is like the heart of this book that you hope when they put the book down, this is what they're going to walk away with when they, leave or put the book down?
Right. I think the heart of it is that there are um, courageous and bold and creative families who are out there living this beautiful life. And we
Mhm.
don't shy away from the hard parts. There are essays that people have shared their darkest hours and where they barely felt they could hold on to homeschooling. And in one essay, she didn't, and she explains what happened there. So it's not sugar coated; it's real life, but it's giving us, it's helping us to not feel alone, and to say like
Mhm.
it's imperfect. There are so many hard days, and it's worth it. So I think that that's really the heart of it, is a realistic look. It's not a how to, or it's not a look how great my family turned out. You should do this too, but kind of these are the nuggets in this area that I've walked away with. And here's how it impacted my family. Take what you can from that and make it your own.
Oh, so good. And you often, talk about mirrors and windows. So mirrors, it helps us to see ourselves differently. Like, oh, maybe that's not so bad, or maybe I could do something differently, or maybe I'm doing a really good job with this. And but windows also, and getting those peeks into someone else. So personally, I would love to hear like when these essays start coming in and you're collecting them. Was there one that where you're just like, I needed this for me? Like, yes, I'm gathering this for the book, and I hope readers are blessed by it. But was there one that just hit you at the right moment that spoke something that your heart needed?
Wow, there were so many, and I was editing them over time, and I remember like crying like on a couple of them, and partially like in lament for my sister, my sister in Christ, and hearing her heart, but also
Mm,
sometimes in seeing myself and my own story and thoughts mirrored in that. I would say one that especially touched me was by there are two essays there by dads, and I just felt humbled to hear how
mm,
deeply involved they feel emotionally with their children, and in both cases their wives are the primary homeschoolers. But these men were speaking about this like it changed their lives. And I think a lot of times we see dads as like ancillary. I mean, my husband's great, but let's be true, I'm the homeschooler, you know what I mean? And to see how much of their identity is attached to their children being homeschooled, and to hear the pull of how they wish that they could spend more time deeply entrenched in the homeschooling life, but that they do as much as they can while also relishing the fact that the work that they're doing is what's allowing their wives to pour into their children in this way. It definitely touched me. It made me see my husband in a different way. Um, and I felt like those are voices that honestly we just don't really hear that much. Mostly when I go to conferences, there are a lot of men talking. They're mostly telling us how to do something, and that's not neither here
Yeah.
nor there. Sometimes I'm a little bit like, okay, brother, but
Are you there when the kid is, like,
yeah,
struggling to read and the
right.
baby's crying and
I'm like, okay, yeah, you studied that, but have you lived it? But anyway, I've learned things, but here was a different view, and they weren't telling us what to do, but rather telling us how it feels to be a part of what's happening with their families in a very tangible way. So those two essays just took me out.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna have to jump to those. Those are
Yeah.
that sound really good. I'm loving the ones I'm reading. They're
Mhm.
so good, and I love that you brought it up the dad part of it because my husband goes to most homeschool conferences with me because I can't drive the trailer. Like, that is truly the reason. There is this big trailer with all the books, and, that's the more books I publish, it's a big trailer, and he takes time, so he sometimes works for the hotel room, but especially on the evenings and weekends, he'll take time to be in my booth and tell people about my books. And I didn't realize how much, because there's other dads there or even women, love hearing from him and asking him questions. And I was up in Branson at a Teach 'em Diligent conference, and this couple walk up and like, "Is your husband here?" And I'm like, "Hey, like, you were just in my talk. Don't you want to talk to me?" Like, and I said, "Oh," because he was flying in. He had a meeting, a work meeting in Seattle. He's like, "He's flying in tomorrow." And like, "Okay, what time is he going to be here?" And I'm like, "Okay."
Wow.
And then they left afterwards. So they came because 2 years prior at a different conference that they were at, he had talked to them about foster care and adoption, and they were like kind of praying about it. And then suddenly, like, for they said for like 2 hours, he just talked to them. And I had my kids were probably running the booth and probably giving people massive sales because my daughter doesn't know what to do. She just pushes like all these sale buttons and the books will fly out. But they said they wanted to talk to him because then they went home, they applied for foster care, and they were adopting kids from foster care, and they wanted him to know. And I'm like, okay, so yes, he can't tell them. He has no idea what curriculum I use. He has no
Mhm.
idea what the what how to teach a kid with dyslexia to read. Like, he wouldn't be able to answer those questions, but like you were saying, the heart of it, the reason why, and then adopting from foster care and homeschooling, like, he can give people encouragement in different ways. And so I love that you're putting those. And we sometimes see, like you're saying, like, well, you don't know what I'm really doing during the
Mhm.
day, but the reason that we're doing it together is because we're together and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they make it possible for us to do this.
Yes. Absolutely.
Now, I think this book will be perfect. Like, definitely, I mean, I have been homeschooling for 30 years. I'm loving it. Someone who's in the middle of the journey, they're going to love it. But also, I think it'll be really good for those who are what you call homeschool curious and like, what is it really like? And I don't want to ask my friend all these questions because if I ask my friend all these questions, then she's going to like pressure me like Judy or something like that. They're
Yeah.
going to, suddenly I'm going to have to do it.
Cooking.
So this is a great, like, peek into, like, okay, what is this like? If you're just even considering, like, the tiniest little bit considering it, or someone's mentioned it to you, or maybe you just have a baby. And I love when there's homeschool parents that are, like, pregnant, or parents, that are pregnant at the homeschool conferences because they just are trying to check it out and see what it's like. So tell us about how this would be good for someone who is homeschool curious.
Well, I think that when someone who's homeschool curious speaks with one of us, a lot of times we tend to go straight to curriculum. We're like, oh, you can do
Mhm.
this for spelling. Oh, let me show you what we're using for reading. We use math. We used to do this for math. Then we did this. Then we did this. Now we do this. And science experiments, a little shady. We get into like the school-ish part, the things that they can
Mhm.
connect most to school. And I think that while curriculum discussions are especially fun when you're getting started, I don't think that that's what allows you to thrive as a homeschooler. So people who haven't um, successfully continued homeschooling, even though they wanted to, it isn't because they didn't have the right curriculum or couldn't find it. It's usually these less tangible, um,
Mhm.
hidden emotional things, the feelings of overwhelm, the feelings of comparison, the thief of joy. And it are these things we don't talk about that much. So when someone says, oh, I'm thinking about homeschooling, tell me about it, we're not like, you have to guard your heart, you need a family rhythm,
Mhm.
where are you going to maintain margin and white space? What about your relationship with your kids? You got the perfect math curriculum, but you guys are screaming at each other. So where is that going to lead So this book gives you this other side that says, I trust you're going to get the right spelling list. It's going to be fine. But these other things you might not hear about. So
Mhm.
this is probably TMI, but I told one of my friends, I'm like, this is the placenta, this book. And that was like, when I was
Mhm.
pregnant and have my first baby, like people were telling me all this stuff, but nobody told me that like there was stuff that comes later out of the after the baby. And it's like looking and like afterbirth. I'm like, wait a minute, women, where was this conversation? All those things you told me about, you never mentioned that something else was coming out. And like I felt like this is kind of that, like, hey
Yeah.
guys, let me tell you, there's more to it than just what you're seeing on a quick Google or what your friend at church might mention to you. So that's why I think it's important.
I love that. That's I love that illustration too. Like what where did this come from? Because this was not something I expected and it's not looking good right here.
Right,
So
right.
oh, so good. Okay, before we go, I want you to mention your other books, your other resources. Like, there's so much that you have and offer. You already mentioned your blog, so just tell us all the things, and of course where to find it. Because I just feel like you have so much rich materials, resources, and stuff that people, if they're interested or are homeschooling, need to know about.
Yeah, so I am at heritagemom.com, and there they can find all those years of blog posts as well as some lesson guides that I offer, literature based guides to help with your reading aloud and your kids' reading, especially as it comes to African American culture and history. And I wrote a book called Soul School and taking your children through a joy filled journey through the heart of Black American culture. And it is a book of books. I expect it to be on the shelf with Honey for a Child's Heart and Read Aloud
Mhm.
Family. And so I talk about the value of reading about African American culture and the diaspora, and then tons of deeply, richly annotated and curated book lists with discussion questions and project ideas. And all of the books were written by Black authors who are telling our stories. And I think all kids would benefit. My first book before that was A Place to Belong, which is kind of part manifesto, part guide about living this open handed, expansive life with our children where we are focused in our homes on them being deeply rooted so that they can spread wide branches towards other people. And then Homegrown is my third book. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Heritage Mom Blog, and I'm active in all those places.
Yeah, and if you go to podcasts and just put her name in there, she'll pop up in different places too, and there's some great conversations that you have, and I love that search feature. It's not only like you can search for, "Oh, did she talk about this?" or "I wanna hear more about this." I'll do that sometimes, like, "Ooh, what podcast have you been on? Oh, I never thought about asking that question. That's a really good question." So that's another thing, and my other thing I always love to share is, yes, order the book for yourself, but also put it in your library. They always have like recommended reading. Go there today and say, this book is coming out. I think it'll really benefit the library patrons and recommend it to be ordered. Because once it gets out there, there's a lot of people that, again, probably are homeschool curious that maybe not even know about Amber or know about Heritage Mom. Um, but they can peek in through the windows and find that book. So do that too. But thank you so much for being here. I just have loved this conversation. I hope we could connect at a conference again, and our boys will probably be running around together, which will be awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to it.